It's Inspector Lansky. Inspector Lansky is here. This is bad. With how bad this young man beat Mrs. Lansky up, he must be in serious trouble now that Inspector Lansky has arrived. With Inspector Lansky's authority, even if he doesn't die today, he'll be spending a long time in prison. The appearance of the man in the uniform immediately stirred up a commotion in the room. Whispers spread through the crowd. Some of them looked at Dustin in sympathy, while others pitied him. There were also those who looked on with malicious satisfaction. Inspector Lansky, you're finally here. When Mrs. Pruitt saw him, it was as if she saw their savior. She immediately went up to him and complained, "If you came any later, Mrs. Lansky would have been beaten to death." What happened? Vernon Lansky frowned. Dear. Just then, they heard a wail. Mrs. Lansky, with a blooded face, crawled toward Vernon. "May I know who you are?" Vernon was taken aback. He still didn't know what was going on. "Inspector Lansky, she's your wife, Mrs. Lansky." Mrs. Pruitt reminded him. After Vernon took a closer look, his eyes widened instantly. What happened to you?" "It was him. That bastard did this to me." With a trembling hand, Mrs. Lansky pointed at Dustin. Vernon's gaze followed the direction his wife was pointing at. "It was you." His expression turned dark. "You hit my wife," he roared. "Yes, it was me." Dustin nodded and admitted to it plainly. "This bitch was being unreasonable. I was only teaching her a lesson." "You've got nerves. How dare you teach my wife a lesson?" Vernon had a dark and hostile look to him. "Why don't you tell me how you plan on dealing with this matter?" Everyone had to show him respect in this area. If Dustin dared hit his wife, he had to either have a powerful background or be a naive hothead. Before being sure of his identity, Vernon had left some room for negotiation. "If this bitch apologizes to us, I'll let today's incident slide," Dustin said impassively. "What the apologize?" His words left everyone in shock. Was this kid crazy? He wanted the victim to apologize? He even said it in front of Vernon. He had no respect for the inspector at all. "You bastard! Do you know what you just said?" Before Vernon had the chance to speak, Mrs. Pruitt couldn't hold back any longer. She screamed, "This is Inspector Lansky from the Investigation Bureau. He's above everyone else. How dare you make a scene in front of him? You must be tired of living." Inspector Lansky held the second highest position in the Investigation Bureau. It wasn't Anne. "What an impudent bastard. Hurry up and catch him, then subject him to severe punishment," Mrs. Lansky said through gritted teeth. Her eyes gleamed with malice. It was as if she wished to skin Dustin alive. "Young man, you sure are arrogant for someone who just assaulted my wife. Who exactly do you have backing you up?" Vernon narrowed his eyes as they glinted with anger.